So, are you guys with me that the phrase, how many of you have heard the phrase random sample before? That we want something to be random. Like the way we gather our sample should be a random sample. But if I were to ask you guys, what does the word random mean in this context, what would you say?
There's like no trend.
No trend?
A population that represents like the whole population.
A sample? But like, so we want the sample to be random so that it is representative. So my question to you guys is, what, like, all right, go get a random sample. What does that mean? Yeah.
Each like combination that the sample could be has an equal probability of being chosen.
Ooh. I'm going to push back on a little bit of what you're saying, but how about probability is involved somehow? Is that okay?
Yes.
If I say probability has to be involved?
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? You guys don't even know what probability means. If I asked you to define probability without using the words odds, likelihood, chance.
What's the number of times something would happen, not the total? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to describe. Okay. All right, so here's the deal. A random sample is somehow that probability involved, I'm going to say, uses a chance process, i.e., names drawn from a hat. Would that be random? What if I rolled a die? Would that be random? What if I just went out and picked 3 people? Is that random? But I'm just randomly picking.
Like if your eyes were closed.
You think I don't know? You don't think I could pick my sample right now with my eyes closed and tell you exactly? I want it to be Math,
Well, I said if we move around.
Michael,
Right.
Vivi.
Not really. That was kind of like the phone.
You said math.
But you guys get what I'm saying, right? Okay. All right. Now, when we sample, there's 2 different ways we get sample, but really we only use one of them, but I'm going to tell you both. Okay. To sample with replacement means the population is always the same. And this seems silly. But let's go ahead and say, let's continue this. I'm going to pick 3 of you to be in my sample. Okay? So before I make my first pick, the population is everybody sitting in this room, yes? Okay. Then I pick my first person. It's Maggie. The population from which I'm drawing, is it the same? Or is it different once I draw somebody? It's technically different if we sample without replacement. Okay? And most of the time, that is in fact what we do. The population changes as people are selected. Does everybody kind of get what's going on here? Yes?
Can you explain what sampling with replacement, like the example again?
So if I wanted to sample with replacement, I would draw Maggie out, right? She's in my sample. And then before I select my next person, I put her back into the population. I've replaced her into the population. So that when I'm drawing I'm drawing from an identical population each time. Okay, but here's the deal. In the real world, we don't really do this. I don't want to say never, but it's pretty much never. Okay? Rarely does the same person count as 2 people in a sample. Is this okay? All right. Now, we're going to basically do kind of 2 activities today. All right. The first activity is talking about this concept of can we eyeball random. Now, is it safe to assume that most of you have heard of Beyonce?
Yeah.
Okay. So the activity we're going to do right now is someone has called into question whether or not Beyonce wrote the song Crazy in Love. You with me? All right. So what we're going to do is figure out, well, our goal is going to be taking a sample to estimate the length of the words inside the song Crazy in Love. Very good? So here's how we're going to do it. Each of you is going to take a different sample. The words for this song are written on both sides of this piece of paper. One side is different from the other, though, in terms of formatting. Is everybody good? The side I'm giving to you face up is the side that needs to stay face up until I tell you. Does everybody understand what I am saying? Okay. Now, what you're going to do when I tell you is turn the paper over and circle 5 words to get a random sample of the 5 words of. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Are these 5 words in a row, or just random words?
This is you eyeballing a random sample of 5 words off of this. We just randomly pick 5. Randomly pick 5 words. It sounds just like it, right? I thought so.
You can write out these.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Man!
That's
It's my fault, not yours.
Oh, I never flipped it. Is this a?
Yeah, no. It's because I hole punched differently when I punched them. You should have the numbered side up for now. Okay? Alright. So, you're going to do your best. You only get 5 seconds to circle words. Why am I only giving you 5 seconds to circle these 5 words? You're not doing it on that side. You're just circling 5 words. On the other side, you have 5 seconds. Why am I only giving you 5 seconds?
So it's true.
If I give you longer than 5 seconds, are you going to think about which words you are circling?
Yes.
We're gonna flip the words.
Okay, that's right. You're doing it on the other side when I tell you to do so. All right. I'm going to count down from 5 once I tell you to flip the paper, and you need to have all your 5 circles done in that 5 seconds. Is everybody with me? So what's going to happen?
Circle 5 words in 5 seconds.
Flip, then circle, but yes. Flip, then circle. Ready, set, go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everybody good?
Too fast. I didn't even my pencil couldn't move that fast.
Where? Am I on the other side? I thought you said about the number side up.
Yeah, and then you flip it over.
And then you flip it. I don't understand how this was not clear.
Stop. All right, you guys, do you mind if I do this real quick?
Go ahead.
Most of those are words. Some of them too. Okay. All right, so I'm going to write down my 5 words. You write down your 5 words. Love got me looking so crazy right now. Yes. 2 letters. Okay. Once you have your 5 words, can you please find the average word length of those 5 words? Yeah, you can use your calculator. All right. We're just going to go around the room. For instance, my average was 3. I'm just going to go around the room. You're just going to tell me your average word length. Yes? Everybody good? Vivi?
4.6.
Over 2.
3.4, sorry.
You're good?
5.6.
Yeah, you're doing your best to copy this. It doesn't have to be perfect.
5.6.
5.2. 3.4. 4.6. 3.4. 6.
6.
4.6.
5.
You guys, you're really bad at this. Really bad. Yeah. Well, you're really good at proving the point I was hoping this activity would prove. Okay. All right. Did anybody besides me? You guys saw me do it, right? I went cover my eyes. I'm stabbing at the paper, right? Okay. Did anybody else follow that strategy? No? All right. Now, even though you were instructed not to have a strategy because you were doing this randomly, did anybody try to get a few small ones and a few big ones? How many of you looked at the page with the other side up? And were like, oh, I know what some of these words are.
Like, I know what they mean.
No, but you already had an idea of what some of the words were,
Well,
yeah?
not really, because I didn't realize that they were going to be the same words, so it could actually caught me
Fair
off guard.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Hey, guys, according to this graph, what would you guys estimate to be the mean word length of the page? 4.6-ish? So remember we did that balancing point idea? Where does my lightsaber need to be so that this balances? Just tell me where to stop. There-ish. Yeah, so 4.5, 4.6. Sure. So I'm going to just put 4.6 question mark. All right. Now, for this next part, we're going to, instead of trying to eyeball random, let's see what happens when we take, a chance process to get a random sample of these 5 words. So go ahead and turn to this other page where it's numbered. That was done on purpose. All right. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is take out your calculators, please. All right. And I'm going to show you a function that I doubt you've used before, though theoretically maybe, but I doubt it. Okay? So, guys, we're going to go into the math menu. It's right under the alpha key. I hit alpha instead. All right? And I want you to arrow over so that PRB at the top is highlighted. We're not going to pick random. We're going to pick rand int, option number 5. Okay? Pick the wrong thing again. Okay. For your min, I would like you to put the number 1. Where it asks you, did yours say upper, lower, and upper? Yeah. Okay, so for lower, you're going to put 1. For upper, you're not going to do 297 yet, okay? These calculators were programmed, but not programmed for this whole randomness thing. So we have to, it's kind of like we have to disrupt the calculator's thinking by all of us doing something different, okay? So what I'd like you guys to do for the upper is put whatever your favorite number is. Any number you want. That is your favorite. Don't tell anyone. Just put it in.
Does it have to be above 1?
Yeah. It has to be an integer and it has to be above 1. Okay? And then for n, you're just going to make that a 1. and all that tells you is how many integers we're generating. And just hit enter a few times. So I got 2, my next one's 7, my next one's 5. Everybody with me? And what is it doing? It's picking random numbers in between the two numbers we gave it. Okay? Has everybody done this? It doesn't matter. What was your max?
Yeah, I was getting really big numbers too.
Well, what did you put as your max?
Was the max supposed to be like
Should be whatever your favorite number is.
right? But should it be like close to that? Because like
It doesn't matter right now. We're not doing this part right now.
Oh, okay.
So just hitting numbers to practice. Really what we're doing is disrupting our calculator.
Okay, got it.
Is everybody good? Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to worry about the ones on the page. All right. So if I randomly want to pick 5 numbers from the ones on the page, instead of making my max 8, what should I make it? Now I'm going to make it 297. But I needed to get myself so stupid. And then for right now, guys, you're going to keep that n to be 1. Okay, we're going to do them one at a time. So as we hit enter, my first word is going to be number 260. So I look at this list and I say number 260 was cuz. Does this make sense? And then I'm going to go again. My next one is 140, so I'm going to go to this list and figure out, well, what word is that? Cuz looking. Uh-oh. I got 140 again. Do I use it twice?
Yes.
No.
No. Because most of the time, that would be sampling with replacement. So when we do this, we ignore repeating numbers and just keep going and get another one. So my next one is 148. Okay, I'd like to give you guys a second to get your axes drawn, then we're going to go around and talk about the average word lengths again. Are we ready to start marking them down as people read them out? Vivi, what was yours?
3.2.
3.6.
Daria?
4.
Ellie?
3.8.
3.8?
3.6.
3.2.
3.2.
3.2. 3.4.
3.6.
4. 4.4. 3.8.
There's always one, Jillian. There's always one. Mine this morning in the morning class was high like that, where everybody else, like, there's always one. There really is always one. Huh?
I don't know, I don't remember where all of them go. Like all these books.
I was doing them as they came through, right?
Well, I know I was too. I just am not good at it.
There's less thinking for me to plot it. All right. Now, guys. Which graph do you trust the process better? The computer generated one, yeah? You guys feel more comfortable with that one? And as you look at this one, if I asked you guys, especially if we ignore Jillian, sorry, Jillian. Okay? If I asked you to estimate the mean word length on the page now, what would you say? Somewhere between 3.4 and 3.5. Are you guys comfortable with that? So tell me, when we eyeballed random, where we just tried to do it ourselves, were we good at it?
No.
You guys with me? And what about the second graph is better?
It's like actually random and not just like.
Well, but in terms of making our estimation, do you guys see how less spread out it is?
Right.
Like figuring out the center of this one, way easier than figuring out the center of this one. Is this okay? All right. So, like cardinal differences, as you know, less spread out is a big idea. If you think about what we're trying to do is take this sample to make an estimate, we want all the possible estimates to be relatively close to each other. Is this okay? All right. Now, turns out that we think the true mean length is somewhere between 3.4 and 3.5. All right, now. It is absolutely 100% known that Beyonce wrote all the songs for Destiny's Child. You guys probably don't know Destiny's Child. Do you know Destiny's Child? Say my name, say my name. No? That was probably the most famous one that I can remember. I think. All the women who independent, throw your hands up. That one? No?
And then what about
No, it was the Charlie's Angels soundtrack. It was killer.
what about paying bills?
Huh?
What about paying bills and like how you should.
You got to pay my bill. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Destiny's Child, the average song length for Destiny's Child songs was 3.64 letters. What do you guys think? Does Beyonce write all of her own songs?
I would hope so.
You could just look this up on
Real.
Well, the whole idea is behind this is that what if we were to suspect that Beyonce's website isn't correct?
Oh.
What is she lying about this?
She would go for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, given what we have about the average word length in this song and what we know about her own songwriting, what do you guys think? Do you think she wrote it?
I think it's fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too far off. Like if it were like 5, we'd probably be like.
Yeah,
"No."
I'm going to say it's pretty reasonable to think she did write it. Because the average word length is close to her average. Feeling good so far? So if I were to say, oh, I'm going to go out in the hallway and pick a random sample of people, you would say, Meister, you can't do that because we're terrible judges of random. When we did it ourselves, it was bad. And when we let the computer do it, it was good. Is everybody comfortable with this? All right. Now, you know what, guys? Let's go ahead and cross this page out, but leave some room. You have some room on the bottom of this? Okay. But I need you guys to have that space on the bottom. Okay? All right. This was an example of what we call a simple random sample. And we abbreviate simple random sample with the phrase SRS. So, remember how you guys get a wicked awesome curve? And I did give you that because the College Board's nasty about some of the details. This is one of the topics that we're going to cover where the details that you have to include are incredibly specific. So I want to take you through all the things that we did and how you would word it to get a simple random sample of 5 words from this page. Is this okay? All right. So what was the very, very first thing we did to get the simple random sample? And when I say we, I mean collectively. If you had generated those numbers without this page in front of you, how would that have gone? The numbers would just be truly just a set of random numbers, okay? So the very, very first thing that I did before you guys even started here is, since we were trying to get a sample of words on the page, the first thing I gave you was all the words being assigned a number. Is everybody with me? I assigned a number to each word in the song. Does this make sense? Okay, so was the number I assigned the words random? No. It was just the order they were written in. A lot of times, like, if I wanted to take a random sample of each of you guys, I might do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Is this okay? All right, so we assign each word a number between 1 and 297. Then what did we do? Once we had all of these assigned, we used a random number generator . And guys, if you use the abbreviation RNG, that is fine, because that's going to get really annoying writing out the phrase random number generator. Okay? To get. This is where it starts getting a little bit picky. How many numbers did we get?
5.
Because our sample size was 5, right? But you know what, guys? Miss Meister generated 6. Why did I have to generate 6? Because of the repeat. So you're going to say generate 5 unique numbers. Then you're going to say, and what did we measure our numbers? Their length, yes? Measure the length of the words corresponding with those numbers. Feels picky, doesn't it? Yeah.
I was just wondering, so what would the question say to correspond with basic answer? Like,
This would be like, I would say, describe a method for gathering a random sample of 5 words from these 297 words. How are we feeling so far? All right. You guys like Harry Styles?
He's alright.
Is it like all over the place? Is Harry Styles like a I either love him or I hate him? Is there anybody who's like meh?
I feel like everyone's gonna that, or they're like fanatic. I don't know if anyone like gives like sentences, but I don't know. That's just my read.
Let's just. You know what I'm gonna say with absolute certainty? I've never heard a song by Harry Styles.
You probably have.
that's not a One Direction song? You literally have.
I don't
Like,
think
turn
so.
the radio on ever.
Yeah, if you've ever turned on the radio, you've 1,000% heard
You
a Harry
guys-
Styles song.
Guys, if you had to guess which radio station was playing when I turned on the radio, what would you guess?
97.9.
It might be a podcast. It's definitely not 97.9.
Sunny 95.
It might be Sunny
You just
95.
put it on. That's like what it defaults to, right?
89.7.
Oh.
Oh. That's what Grunch is.
You have to, you like pass by someone.
A big The Watermelon Sugar song, you've 1,000% heard.
Oh, for sure.
Watermelon sugar?
Yeah. I'm so sure you've heard it.
You definitely heard it.
Let's talk about some other ways we might consider taking a sample, okay? That is still random, but not as randomized as, say, a simple random sample, okay? And what I'm going to point out is there's still good ways and bad ways to do this. Now, those of you who, when you were circling the words on the page, tried to get a few little ones and a few medium-sized ones and a few long ones, that is an attempt to do what we're about to do next, called a stratified random sample. Everybody good? All right, so I put Harry Styles here, but you can pick any musical artist you want, okay? And each of these are the seats at this musical concert, right? So here's the artist, here's like the seats, yes? Everybody good? All right, and let's say every person at this concert was asked to rate their experience at the show on a scale of 1 to 100. Everybody with me? Talk to me about what you would expect to see there.
A lot of 100s.
A lot of 100s?
Nobody's gonna pay $200 to go to a concert for someone they don't like.
Fair enough. But like nobody
That's different if you enjoy it or not.
but okay, so take it think of it as like a local music band then, okay?
Okay.
Just in general, what might we expect in terms of the ratings of the experience at a concert based on the seats?
Better by the stage. Better by the stage.
Better by the stage, yes? Higher by the stage. Okay. What about, so as I'm going through this, could we generate a random sample of 10 seats using the process that we had just done? Is everybody with me? All right, you ready? These are the 10 seats. Can I borrow your calculator real quick? Just because mine's annoying. Okay, I'm just doing random digits. Okay, I'm giving up on calculators, I think. There we go. I'm doing random digits 1 to 50. All right. First one I got was 50. That's this guy. Cool? Next one I got was 11. That's this guy. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would be 11, 21, 31, 41. That's how I'm doing this, yeah? And then across. Next one, 40. Next one, 48. Next one, 12. 19. 1. 47. 6. What do you guys think of my sample? Thanks.
I guess it's technically random, but I feel like if you ask a person to choose random, they would put a lot more in the middle.
Okay, so we didn't get many in the middle. I have I have them in the two corners, right? That feels a little bit icky. It might not be that reliable, right? Could it have happened that I got all people in the front row? Or in the first two rows? Is that a problem to get people only in the front two rows if we're trying to figure out how much people enjoyed a concert? Yeah, if I only had people in the first two rows, would my estimate of enjoyment be high or low? High. Is it possible I could have gotten only people in the last two rows? In fact, this morning, that's what happened to me. I had one in the front row and everybody else was in the back two rows. Is everybody with me? And it's still a good process. It's still as close to a representative sample as we can get. Okay? But sometimes when I know that there's going to be a problem, I might choose to do something called a stratified random sample. And here's how the stratified sample might go. I might have said, hey, I'm going to pick 2 fans from just the front row. And then 2 fans from the second row. And then 2 fans from the third row. And to select each of these, okay? To select each of them, I'm going to draw names out of a hat. So it's still random. Okay? It's just random from each row. Tell me about that estimate of people's enjoyment. Do you think it'll be spot on?
I mean, no, it's not going to be spot on, but it's going to be a lot more accurate.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, comparatively to this one, I think it's going to be way better, yeah? Because what's going to happen? I'm going to have a couple of the folks who were the diehard fans going into it, right? And then I'm going to have a couple of folks who were still closer and closer, and then I'll have a few of the ones who were the furthest away. Does this make sense? And this is called a stratified random sample. What if instead I picked a few people from each column? Would that or pick one person from each column? Would that make sense to do? No. Why not? Yeah, if I do one from each column, it could be these ones.
But also,
it's not.
Towards the middle is the best seats, too. If you're
I'm with you. That I totally agree with. That I totally agree with. However, I think you would get, there's much more of a relationship between the rows than there is between the columns.
Yeah.
Okay? How are we feeling so far? Is this okay? All right. So which one would I want to stratify by? I would stratify by the rows. Because that's where the messy variables are. Is this okay? Okay. So what is a stratified sample? A stratified random sample is one where we divide the population.
Does this have its own abbreviation?
No. And don't confuse it with when you see SRS. SRS is simple random sample. And we use SRS, simple random samples are the most common kind of sample. Okay. Divide the population by a characteristic. But not just any characteristic. We divide by a characteristic that we know influences the response variable, or influences our variable of interest? Remember, we knew the rows are probably the biggest influence on how much enjoyment people got out of a concert. Is this okay? All right. Not only did we separate into those groups first, we then randomly select a few from each group. And let's go ahead and take 5, and then we'll do the one. There's one more type of sample, but this is a heavy writing and paying attention day. You deserve a break. When we stratify, we would divide by the different campuses, and when we would do that if we know that characteristic, the different campuses, influences the response variable. So here's what so in other words, would it make sense if the campuses looked identical to each other? Would it make sense to get 2 separate samples? No. When would it make sense to sample from both campuses? When the campuses look different from each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay?
I just assumed
All right. We have one more type of sample that I want us to discuss, okay? And the name of this sample is called a randomized cluster sample. All right, so here's what I did for you guys. This table has all the actual enjoyment ratings filled in. Is anybody shocked by what you see?
No, not at all.
It makes sense, doesn't it? People near the stage rated a lot higher than people not near the stage. Okay? So here's the question. Could we say like, hey, wouldn't it just be kind of easy to select an entire column? Right? So if I wanted a sample of 10, couldn't I be like, oh, I want to pick randomly this number, these 2 columns?
That would be easy, yeah.
Would it, and if I used a chance process to pick the columns, would it be random?
No.
If I used a chance process to pick which columns I do, it would be random. Is everybody with me?
Is it still convenience sampling?
Not if no, convenience sampling would be I just pick 2 columns, the first 2 columns, okay? As long as the way at some point a chance process is used. Like, I don't know, I have 10-sided dice. What if I rolled a 10-sided die and I rolled a 2 and a 6 or a 2 and a 7? Here would be column 2, here would be column 7. Would that work? Cool? All right. And when we look at this particular thing, would it be a representative sample? Yeah, I'd have some of the front row seats, I'd have some of the back row seats. Okay? So here's what makes a randomized cluster sample. For a cluster sample, we also divide the population in 2 groups. And after we do that, but those groups are by no characteristic. There's no reason how I divide those up, okay? And then what I'm going to do is randomly select the entire group. I'm going to say instead of an entire group. So, for example, I divided it up into 10 columns, and then I randomly selected the entire column. Okay? Now, Students often confuse stratified random sampling and cluster sampling, okay? The whether or not they're divided by characteristic can be hard to understand. So don't worry about the characteristic piece. If it is a stratified sample, I select from each group. If it's a cluster sample, I select an entire group. Everybody okay? That distinction. Now, in the real world, cluster samples are used really frequently. Okay? So imagine, do you guys know the corporation Lowe's, like the home improvement store Lowe's? How many stores do you think they got? A lot. How many employees do you think they have? A lot. Okay. So let's imagine Lowe's would like to revamp its medical programming, like its medical care for its employees. So they want to gather input. Is it reasonable for Lowe's to ask all their employees? That seems crazy, right? Okay. Now, do you think they would have interest in making sure they selected managers, cashiers, guys that work in the garden department, guys that work in the lumber yard? You guys get what I'm saying here? Okay. Should they try to stratify by those? So now they're going to contact all the managers, get their sample, contact all. You starting to feel how that's icky? Now, wouldn't it make more sense for them to pick a random sample of stores and pick the entire store to work with and gather data? When they pick that entire store, that is a cluster sample. You guys with me on so the cluster samples are one of those ones that it feels kind of weird as to when and how you would use them. That's an example. If I was, say, working for the Roman Catholic Church and I wanted to get a sample of people from the Roman Catholic Church, I might not do a random sample to all Catholics. I might pick an entire church to go in and gather data from. Do you guys see what I'm saying now? Okay, so the cluster samples, especially for super huge populations, make a whole lot of sense. Okay? How are we feeling about all these different types of sampling? All right. I would like you guys to jump to this free response question. It's a few pages in the future. And honestly, I want you to give it a shot. We'll come back together in a few minutes to talk about it. Alright, so guys, I put my answer for part A up. There are two things I would look for. Okay. One, how are the first 500 people who enter the football stadium different from people as a whole? And then a plausible explanation. But the whole idea, this variable of interest of this, is opinion on the school buildings, the appearance of the school buildings. So if you didn't mention the appearance of the school buildings, then your answer probably doesn't have enough in it. Is this okay? Now, can I tell you another answer that a student has written at some point? Oh, the first locals to a college probably don't get to the game early. They're probably hanging out and tailgating and doing their own thing. So the first 500 people in the stadium are probably the visitors who don't have a place to tailgate. So their opinions are probably worse of the school buildings. Guess what? That would be a totally acceptable answer, as long as you're talking about how those 500 are different and how it influences the response variable. That being said, this is the right answer. But the other one would also be an acceptable answer. Is this okay?
Wait, so like the AP exam had this question on it.
This was an AP question. This was from the 2013 test.
Right, and somebody said, well, the people who get there early are gonna dislike it. Would that get like a P?
If you said the people who got there early the people who get there early are more likely to be from the visiting team, because home team people have their own pregame rituals. And because they're from the visiting team, they probably have more negative opinions of the school building.
And they'd be chill with that?
They'd be chill with that.
Okay.
They would be fine with it. As long as you're talking about a plausible reason as to why they are different and how it influences that variable of interest. Yeah.
I was saying something like, so the football players would get to the stadium first, would that be like something different, or like would that be
If you said the football players are going to get there first, they obviously love their university, so they're more likely to say something nice. That would be fine. Everybody good? All right. Have you guys done part B yet? Do you need more time for part B? Okay. If you didn't say somehow that you would ask the numbers associated with the students you generated, like the students associated with the numbers you generated, how they feel about school buildings, then you're not including that variable of interest. Okay? What do you guys think? Is this, while annoying and tedious, is the how to get that simple random sample relatively okay? Part C is the tricky one. All right. So the question is, under what circumstances does it make sense to stratify by the different campuses? Okay. So let's go back to like, if you go to, say, the branch campuses for OU, I can speak to those because I've been to some of those. They look very similar to the buildings in Athens, right? Do you guys see what I'm saying there? Like some places have branch campuses that look the same and some don't. So if the main structural like and architectural style is the same and they have the same upkeep, it might not make sense to look at both campuses separately. Okay? So stratification by campus would be more precise if the two campuses were different from each other.
Why would it be more precise?
So the I get the wording's kind of weird here. The stratification itself, when it the end result, the combined estimate would be more closely resemble the actual estimate of all students. Think about if we did that when we do it by the stage, right? If we had one front row, and then we found the average rating, that's gonna be really darn close to the average rating of everybody. It would be more precise. And in fact, if we all took a different sample where we had a couple front row, a couple middle rows, a couple back rows, okay? All of our dot plots would be different, but they'd all look pretty darn close to each other at the same time, right? And the means of all of our dot plots would be really, really close. More precise. How about this? Would be a more precise estimate. Okay. Now, most colleges don't do this anymore. Stratifying by gender is really probably out the window now because most colleges don't have single gender dorms. Like most dorms are co-ed now unless you're at a very conservative school. So it doesn't quite fit anymore when you might stratify by gender. How are we feeling? All right, so now that we've sampled well,